Lecture number 1, Pre-Reading Introduction, Canto 1. Before we begin reading Inferno, Canto 1, there are just two essential figures we need to introduce, Dante and Virgil. Dante Alighieri. Dante was a man from Florence, Italy, born in the year 1265. He lived during the late Middle Ages, a time when Italy was not a unified country, but a collection of city-states, often at war with each other. Politics were fierce and deeply personal, so much so that Dante was eventually exiled from his home city, never to return. But more than a politician, Dante was a poet and a deep thinker. He believed in the power of reason, virtue, and language to shape the soul. The Divine Comedy, the work we're reading from, was his masterpiece, a long, poetic journey through hell, purgatory, and heaven, meant not just to tell a story, but to offer a moral and philosophical vision of life. It's written in his native Italian rather than in Latin, which was a revolutionary choice at the time. In Canto 1, Dante appears as a character, lost and confused in the middle of his life. He tells us he's, quote, midway along the journey of our life. This moment begins his spiritual journey. Virgil. Virgil was a poet from ancient Rome, born more than 1,200 years before Dante, around 70 BCE. He's best known for writing the Aeneid, a grand epic about the founding of Rome. In that story, the hero Aeneas journeys from the ruins of Troy through trials and battles to the land that would become Rome. Because of this, Virgil became known as the great Roman poet, a symbol of reason, wisdom, and classical greatness. For Dante, Virgil represented human reason at its highest. Even though Virgil lived before Christianity, Dante admired him deeply. In Canto 1, it's Virgil who appears to guide Dante out of the dark wood and through hell. So when we meet Virgil in this canto, we're seeing a meeting between two of the greatest poets in history, Dante from the Christian Middle Ages and Virgil from pagan ancient Rome. That's all you need to know to read Canto 1. Dante is a medieval Florentine poet in exile and writing a deeply personal and moral story. Virgil is a revered Roman poet, author of the Aeneid, and here a symbol of reason and guidance. Now, pause today's lecture and read John C. Ciardi's translation of Canto 1 of Dante's Inferno. Lecture number 1, Post-Reading Integrations, Canto 1. Integration number 1, lines 1 through 3, the age and time of the story's beginning. Midway in our life's journey, I went astray from the straight road and woke to find myself alone in a dark wood. Here, our Christian pilgrim, Dante Alighieri, is lost in a dark wood at the midway point of life's path. A lifespan, per the Bible, is one of 70 years, as said in Psalm 90:10. Quote, our days may come to 70 years. Dante was born in 1265, and in 1300 he was precisely 35. Thus, the poem itself begins in the year 1300 exact. Integration number 2, line 1, the opening line's pedigree. Midway upon the journey of our life, line 1, evokes both biblical and classical precedents. On the biblical side, we have Isaiah 38:10, quote, "In the middle of my days I must depart." On the classical side, we have Horace's Ars Poetica, which famously instructs poets to begin in media res, in the midst of things. Such an injunction is a hallmark of the epic poetry tradition, with every epic poem, from Homer to Virgil and now Dante, as well as Milton, beginning in the middle of events, in media res. Dante is intentionally and clearly placing himself in such an epic tradition. From the very first verse, the very first line, Dante invokes both a classical and biblical pedigree, already capturing what will be the spirit of the Renaissance, the Christian rediscovery of Greece and Rome. Integration number 3, line 1. Aristotle on time, Dante the poet's first word, mezzo, or midway. Midway upon the journey of our life. In Aristotle's physics, time is described as, quote, "a kind of middle point, uniting in itself both a beginning and an end, a beginning of future time and an end of past time." In Dante's prose treatise, the Convivio, the banquet, published around the same time frame as the Inferno, Dante references this directly. Quote, "Time, according to Aristotle in the fourth book of the Physics, is, quote, number of movement according to before and after," end quote. Even more interesting, in his 1294 lyrical poem, Le Dolce Rime, meaning the sweet rhymes, Dante translates Aristotle from Latin into Italian, referring to the Aristotelian golden mean as mezzo, the middle. Quote, "Quest secondo che l'etica dice, un abito elegante, lo qual dimora in mezzo solamente." In translation, this is, as the ethic states, a habit of choosing which keeps steadily to the mean. Dante will use this exact poem in Book 4 of the Convivio and devote the whole discussion to Aristotle's ethical system, in which virtue is the mean, the mezzo. Thus, in the first verse of the Commedia, the comedy, Dante the poet, the real-life Dante, the narrator, not the character, not only champions the Christian and the pagan, but most of all, in the first word, he also stakes his unabashed loyalty to the master of those who know, old Aristotle. Integration number 4, line 1. Our path through life. Midway in our life's journey, I went astray. The Comedia's work of creating a new universe for us to explore, of encouraging its readers to feel that they are journeying along with Dante, begins with life as a path on which we all walk. This experience of life as a journey is not unique to Dante. It is a universal human experience. Integration number 5, lines 8 through 9, what the Commedia, the comedy, is. Despite the fact that we're about to take a pilgrimage through hell, we are told, quote, "But since it came to good, I will recount all that I found revealed there by God's grace." The nature of a commedia, of a comedy, according to Dante and the Middle Age tradition, is one where, very simply, This story begins tragic or bad and ends happy or good. Despite the fact that we're about to take a pilgrimage through hell, remember that this story has a good, quote, happy ending. That despite all the suffering and torture that the souls of Inferno experience, our story comes to a shining, rejuvenating conclusion. Integration number 6, lines 15 through 18. The sun as a planet, Dante's cosmology. But at the far end of that valley of evil, whose maze had sapped my heart with fear, I found myself before a little hill and lifted up my eyes. Its shoulders glowed already with the sweet rays of that planet whose virtue leads men straight on every road. In Dante's cosmology, the sun is classified as a planet, that is, one of the heavenly spheres that revolve around the earth. Dante's cosmology is one that follows the medieval tradition of adhering to the Ptolemaic geocentric view of the heavens. The order of the planets is as follows: the moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the fixed stars, the prima mobo. Dante's cosmology will play a central role in structuring Paradiso, in that, starting with the moon and going planet by planet, literally visiting each all the way to the prima mobo, a kind of in-between of the planets and the Empyrean as where God lives. Dante will make a clear point of exploring the known reaches of the universe, all for his soul's salvation. Integration number 7, lines 22 through 27. Dante as a Ulyssian figure. Once Dante leaves dark wood and reaches what Ciardi describes as the, quote, little hill, Dante gives us a penetrating metaphor. Quote, just as a swimmer who with his last breath flounders ashore from perilous seas might turn to memorize the wide water of his death, so did I turn, my soul still fugitive from death's surviving image, to stare down that past that none had ever left alive. Just before Dante goes to climb this so-called little hill of joy, Dante gives us the image of a shipwrecked man who climbs from the watery deep to the shore. Such an image is the first Ulyssian reference in the poem, a reference to the featured soul of Inferno 26, Ulysses, Odysseus, the great Odysseus who comes to perdition from being lost at sea. Dante here positions himself as a positive Ulyssian figure, one who we know will survive his voyage, one who completes his journey. Integration number 8, lines 31 through 36. The emerging theme of the Commedia, will and the soul. And lo, almost at the beginning of the rise, I faced a spotted leopard, all tremor and flow and gaudy pout, and it would not pass, but stood so blocking my every turn that time and again I was on the verge of turning back to the wood. The theme of the Commedia, that the use of one's will determines the fate of one's soul, is first saliently communicated, in my eyes, in the pilgrim's encounter with the leopard. His confrontation with this beast tests his moral compass and spiritual resolve, prompting him to almost give up before the pilgrimage even begins. Such a test, one of being confronted with obstacle, with sin, and having to choose between following the quote true way or the false, is yet one of the many testaments to the universality of this poem. Integration number 9, lines 37 through 39, the metaphysical time of season. This fell at the first rising of the dawn, as the sun was climbing Aries with those stars that rode with him to light the new creation. The sun is rising, quote, with the same stars that were with it when God first created the heavens. Those stars represent the constellation Aries. It was rightly believed that creation itself occurred in the springtime. This means, then, the dates March 20th to April 19th, which places us in the Easter season. Such a metaphysical time of season reinforces the theme of new beginnings, of Christian resurrection. Integration number 10, lines 31 through 54, the three beasts. The three beasts, the leopard, the lion, and the she-wolf, come from Jeremiah 5:6. Quote, wherefore a lion out of the forest shall slay them, a wolf of the evening shall spoil them, a leopard shall watch over their cities. Every one that goeth out thence shall be torn in pieces. And commentators have attached rich layers of meaning to each of the three beasts. Regarding what sins the beasts represent, first, the leopard as fraud, per her, quote, gaudy pelt, her deceptive nature, an interpretation supported later in the Inferno. Second, the lion as violence or malice and pride, for his, quote, raging hunger, its enormous head held high. Third, the she-wolf as incontinence, i.e., unbalanced, insatiable desire, which includes avarice, greed, and cupidity. Such three beasts, as we shall see, foreshadow the three divisions of hell proper. Regarding the political undertones of the beasts, the leopard, the gibelline blacks and whites, the sudden changes of laws and customs akin to the leopard's pelt. The lion, the royal house of France, per its violent nature. The she-wolf, Rome and the papacy itself. Rome from the she-wolf that nurses Romulus and Remus. The papacy, as from the many papal alliances that emerged over the years. Quote, she mates with any beast and will mate with more. Integration number 11, lines 61 through 63, Virgil as the goddess Venus. And as I fell to my soul's ruin, a presence gathered before me on the discolored air, the figure of one who seemed hoarse from long silence. Virgil's opening to Dante features his ghost-like appearance, where such a spectral appearance integrates with this scene of Aeneas, the hero of Virgil's Aeneid, first encountering his mother, the goddess Venus, Aphrodite. Quote from the Aeneid, he stood on heaven's height and turned his gaze toward Libya. And as he took the troubles there to heart, Venus appealed to him, all pale and wan, with tears in her shining eyes. Just as Venus revealed herself to Aeneas, pale and deeply concerned, so too does Virgil appear to Dante, discolored, and hoarse. Integration number 12, lines 64 through 66. Dante the Pilgrim's first words. At sight of him in that friendless waste, I cried, have pity on me, whatever thing you are, whether shade or living man. Dante the Pilgrim's the character, not the real life author. First words to Virgil echo Aeneas's first words to Venus disguised as a huntress. Quote from the Aeneid: no, I've heard or seen none of your sisters, only how shall I address you, girl? Your looks not mortal, neither has your accent a mortal ring. What's more, Dante the Pilgrim speaks with an inadvertent Christian voice. His first plea is, quote, have pity on me, which in the Italian is as follows: Miserere di me. This line echoes Psalm 50. Miserere me, Deus, secundo magnum misericordiam tuum. Even though Dante is writing his epic work in Italian, he intentionally has his character's first word be a Latin word, miserere. Latin, of course, is or was the language of the church. Thus, even though Dante wants to champion vernacular Italian, he still maintains a loyalty to the high language of Latin. And even though Dante is invoking a towering pagan figure to eventually be his guide through two of the three realms of the afterlife, Inferno and Purgatorio, he is communicating through the first word to that pagan genius, his dedication both to the church and the Bible. Psalm 50, which is explicitly quoted in Purgatorio. Integration number 13, lines 77 through 87. Dante's love for Virgil as stronger than his fear of the she-wolf. Notice Dante's first question to Virgil. Is this shade before him truly the very same Virgil from antiquity? The same Virgil that is the, quote, fountain of purest speech? And Virgil explains that he is, confirming his lineage, the age of which he lived, sub Julio, in the times of Julius Caesar, the times, quote, of the false and lying gods. How he was the poet who sang, quote, of old Anchises' noble son, Aeneas. Again, the Trojan Roman main protagonist of his own epic poem, who survived, quote, the burning of Troy. Virgil then asks a question. Why is Dante not, quote, climbing that shining mount of joy, which is the seat and first cause of man's bliss? Once Dante is confirmed that it is indeed his Virgil, he immediately relishes in his presence and at the same time does not answer Virgil's direct question. Quote, glory and light of poets, now may that zeal in love's apprenticeship that I poured out on your heroic verses serve me well. For you are my true master and first author, the sole maker from whom I drew the breath of that sweet style whose measures have brought me honor. Only then does Dante stop himself, and only then, once proclaiming his gratitude, love, and sheer reverence for old Virgil, does he ask for help. Help regarding what? The she-wolf, the lupa in Italian, which has remained present throughout the entirety of Dante and Virgil's dialogue, thus far. This is a masterstroke. I, for one, did not notice this fact until I read commentary on Inferno 1. When I read Inferno 1 for the first time, as we are reading it now, I was completely and totally captured by the awe-consuming love Dante has for his teacher, his author, his guide. Such ability to completely cancel out the paralyzing pull of the lupa, the she-wolf, and immerse us in Dante's freeing love for Virgil is one of many testaments to Dante's pure genius. What's more, remember that it is the love for Virgil in all he represents: classical antiquity, poetry, art, secular philosophy, human reason, that overcomes the obstacle of sin and allows the journey to commence. Integration number 14, lines 94 through 100, the Greyhound. Regarding the she-wolf, the lupa, quote, she mates with any beast and will mate with more before the greyhound comes to hunt her down. He will not feed on lands nor loot, but honor and love and wisdom will make straight his way. He will rise between Feltro and Feltro, and in him shall be the resurrection and new day of that sad Italy. Who is the greyhound? Many say Con Grande della Scala, Lord of Verona, Dante's patron, imperial vicar, Ghibelline, and a strong supporter of Dante. Verona is, quote, between Feltro and Feltro, that is, between Feltro and the Marsa Trevigiana, a territory in Venice, and Montefeltro in Romagna. Still, others say the greyhound is Christ himself, born between Feltro and Feltro, or felt and felt. Feltro meaning felt in Italian, with felt as a garb of poverty. This reading makes a special sense to me, as if it is Christ, with Con Grande as only a child in 1300, this would explain why the two F's in Feltro and the G in Greyhound are capitalized. For who else has the privilege of capitalized letters other than God himself? Integration number 15, lines 110 through 111, Virgil's self-reference. Of that sad Italy for which Nisus died, and Turnus and Euryalus and the maid Camilla. Nisus, Turnus, Euryalus, and Camilla are all characters in Virgil's Aeneid. The plot of the Aeneid is for the Trojan commander Aeneas, after the fall of Troy, to sail to the land of Latium, in modern-day Italy, and conquer its native peoples, the Latians and their allies, all to lay the seeds that will eventually sprout into Rome. The four characters Virgil references are all victims in that inevitable war between the surviving Trojans and the native Latians and their allies. As Ciardi explains, quote, Nisus and Euryalus were Trojan comrades in arms who died together. Camilla was the daughter of the Latian king and one of the warrior women. Turnus, who was a military commander and ally of the Latians, was killed by Aeneas in a duel. All four characters were victims in that war fought in, quote, that sad Italy. Integration number 16, lines 105 to 116, structure and plot of the Commedia. Inferno has 34 canti. Purgatorio and Paradiso have 33 each. That makes 100 total. Canto 1 is the extra canto, the prelude. The last lines of Inferno 1 outline the entire journey. Lines 105 to 110 describe hell. Lines 111 to 114 describe purgatory. Lines 115 to 116 describe paradise. When Dante wrote Canto 1, he already had the whole structure in mind and the whole purposeful progression of events, the plot, too. Integration number 17, lines 115 to 119, Dante's calmness. To which, if it is still your wish to climb, a worthier spirit shall be sent to guide you. With her I shall leave you, for the King of Time, who reigns on high, forbids me to come there, since living I rebelled against his law. When Virgil shares that he will not always remain with Dante, that another guide will escort him through Paradiso, should he so choose, Dante the Pilgrim doesn't react. This calmness is a stark contrast to how he will react later in the poem, once he is more emotionally and spiritually invested. It's a subtle but striking detail. Integration number 18, Dante's innovation, combining the popular and the philosophical. Dante's Inferno will draw on both popular iconography, like visions, sermons, and vernacular didactic poetry, and the philosophy and theology of Aristotle and Aquinas, as we shall soon see. What's important to note is that Dante is the first to combine both the popular and the philosophical so deliberately. Dante is the first to combine popular depictions of the afterlife and imbue in them a philosophical nature. Integration number 19, lines 81 through 82, Dante's both and rather than either or nature. Only two figures in the Commedia are ever referred to with the words volume and author. In line 81, Virgil's Aeneid is referred to as, quote, tuo volume, your volume. In Paradiso 33, God's universe is described as, quote, legato con amore in un volume, bound up with love together in one volume. In line 82, Virgil is il mio autore, my author. In Paradiso 26, God is the, quote, verace autore, the true author. For line 81 in our translation, Ciardi translates the line as, quote, your heroic verses, instead of your volume. No one else in the entirety of the Commedia is referred to with the exact words of autore or volume. For what will be a fundamentally Christian journey, Dante's guide is a pagan poet, Virgil, who lived, quote, in the time of the false and lying gods. And yet, Dante not only speaks of his great love for him, but affirms that Virgil really is on equal footing with Christianity in the very significant sense. Conclusion. It must be remembered here at the end of our lecture, especially due to the state of our Western culture today, that one would expect Dante to be either a true supporter of Christianity or a true lover of Greece and Rome. Surely he couldn't have been both. And yet, as we shall see, time and time again, Dante is both a devout Christian and a pagan loving man. To see how Dante would integrate such diametrically opposed philosophical worldviews will be one of the many, many joys of reading this poem. At the end of the Inferno, we'll be able to adequately infer how Dante's Inferno and his Commedia go on to usher in the great period of the Renaissance. What's more, in reading his Inferno, we shall become amongst some of the precious few Westerners who actually go and cash in on our inheritance as Westerners, who go and immerse ourselves in the supreme, divinely superior achievements of Western civilization. It is my privilege and honor to be your guide through this achievement that is a very, very divine poem.